Alright, hello and welcome everyone. This is my first PvP video upload I'm going to do to my channel. That may surprise a number of people that have been subscribed to me for a long time because normally that's all I do on YouTube is PvP. I normally do milsim type stuff, so Arma type stuff. My favorite game of all time is America's Army 2, if that gives you kind of an idea of my background. I really love games where like thinking and strategy and like player movement and things like that are the reason that you win gunfights and things. And while I don't expect this game to completely be like a milsim by any means, I also don't expect it to be completely like a bullet sponge fest. And that's exactly kind of what I don't like about the PvP. But I don't want this video to be as much about me not liking PvP as much as it is about damage mitigation and giving you guys some actual stuff that you can use towards character building for PvP. And just some theory crafting and just the general idea of how PvP damage mitigation is working in the game. So yesterday I came in and started testing some stuff with Little Bird here, and you can see in the video that's what I'm doing. That's why we're all standing back here behind a car, and I'm like moving gear around and checking stuff and looking at stats and things and testing things. And one of the things I wanted to test yesterday was enemy armor damage and seeing if that stat was actually being applied to players in PvP. And the other thing I wanted to see was what is the PvP modifier in the game, and see how much damage that is actually mitigating itself. What just the base number of mitigation there is in PvP essentially, to see what kind of damage numbers you're outputting, and then start looking at those numbers and looking at the ultimates at least, and talking about tactical link a little bit was what I'm going to do in this video. So there's a reason I don't play PvP, and it's because the cover system doesn't get used in the game, and people are just way too tanky and take way too many bullets. And so like using cover and being strategic and outplaying people, that's what I call it when I play in a milsim game like Arma. Like I consistently outplay people who are my opponents in a game like Arma, because I'm just better at maneuvering and flanking people, for instance, or making decisions in the middle of the gunfight that gives me an advantageous position, like using the environment to my advantage, making my opponents make mistakes in these types of environments, and then taking advantage of those mistakes and killing them. And you know, I've uploaded hundreds of hours of gameplay. You can go back and watch some of that if you wish, if you've never seen me in a milsim game. And you know, the people that followed me for all this time will tell you that I can be really devastating in a milsim environment, in a shooter environment, with my thinking and ability to just, like I said, outthink my opponents. You know, I can, you know, there's multiple situations in DayZ where I've just wiped entire squads of guys, I syndicate, and so I couldn't help it, guys. I'm sorry. You know, like the competitiveness comes out in me when I start talking about PvP. But anyway, so let's start talking about the numbers in the game, and you'll see exactly what it is that I don't like about the game. But mainly, I'm giving you guys information that you can use. So the enemy armor damage number that you get by putting it on your gear does not affect enemy players, which I have no idea why it doesn't work that way, especially given the fact that you can mitigate 65% of damage through your armor number itself. So you would assume that they would give offensive players a way to mitigate some of that damage, but there is no such thing in the game. So I think you're going to start seeing the meta of this game be tankiness and damage mitigation stacking, because there are no counters for it, to be honest. And I think that I haven't done any of the testing yet, but my initial assumption is going to be that a character build that I do for PvP is going to be heavily armored, damage mitigation, low DPS. It's not going to be about doing damage. It's going to be about survivability and being a gigantic bullet sponge and being able to mitigate damages in different ways. And it's not going to be about DPS, because I think that the resources that you have to put into DPS to outdo the damage mitigation that they have in the game is probably not going to be, you're just not going to be able to do it at the same in the same way that you can get damage mitigation. So and I think you'll see some of that stuff here right off the jump without me even getting any further into it. So enemy armor damage doesn't mitigate enemy armor mitigation. So So the cap is the cap. So the 65% cap is the number that people are actually going to be hitting 100% of the time if you're running 65% damage mitigation. So how are they adding these numbers up? Well, let's pull up the calculator here and I'll show you. So we got 10,000. If we have a weapon that has 10,000 damage, okay, and we're fighting an enemy that has a player that has 65% damage mitigation. We're going to be doing 35% damage to that player, and so that's going to lower our number to 3,500. This is what you're going to hit a person with who has armor on that has the 65% mitigation cap, okay? And I want to pause this video because so right here what I'm doing, I'm going to go prove a point, and I want to pause the video for just 1 second. So we have 3,500, and then on top of that, we're going to reduce this with this PvP modifier. This number, we're going to reduce it by another 60%. So that's the number, okay? I've tested it on multiple different builds and players, and it definitely works. And it's the number for players shooting me too. And so that number is going to be reduced by 60%. So we're going to multiply the number by I lost it. The number is 1,400. So if we have 10,000 weapon damage, we're going to multiply that by 0.35, and we're going to get 3,500, and we're going to multiply that by 0.4, and we're going to hit people for 1,400. So that is the number that you hit someone for in PvP if you have 10,000 weapon damage. And so all that's going on there is there's a 65% damage mitigation. We're considering that they are at the cap. And then there's the PvP modifier, which reduces damage another 60%. And this is how you get to the number. And so how much damage mitigation is this? Well, 1,400 divided by 10,000, our original number is 0.14, which is minus 1 is 0.86, which gives us 86, guys, 86% damage mitigation from our original damage output. Okay? 86%. That's why when you shoot people, you're hitting them for 400. All right? So our base number we get is 1,400. It's 86% damage mitigation. All right? So that is the reason that this part right here, so I go out, this is just for a complete test. Let me pull down the calculator so you can see what I'm talking about. This right here is me going, so I said I'm going to go up here, I'm going to prove an example here to you, little bird. I'm going to show you how this game works. I'm going to go find a player, I'm going to shoot him. You know what he's going to do? He's going to turn around, he's going to take off running right down the middle of the road, even though I'm in cover, and he's going to come up and he's going to kill me. I'm not going to try to heal, I'm not really trying anything. My gear's all shit because I'm doing testing and stuff. So none of that stuff matters. But the point is how this guy doesn't know that. This guy doesn't know that I'm testing. This guy doesn't know I have shit gear on. Watch him. He runs straight down the middle of the road. No worries. I pop my ultimate. He doesn't even care. He doesn't care that I turned on that ultimate. And I'll show you why he doesn't care I turned on that ultimate in just a second. I pop him. I hit him with a sticky bomb for 15,000, 16,000. That really hurt him pretty good. But only 17,000 because he's probably got like, I think this guy probably has like maybe 55% damage mitigation is I think the number or something like that. I get up, I shoot him with a couple more sniper rounds. You can see that my 46,000 damage sniper rifle's hitting him for 7,600. But notice where his health is. Look at what happened. This guy is dead. Dead. And he just, what does he do? Bam. Oh, no problem. Med kit, 95% health back. Bam, 95% health. Now you got to fight through this damage mitigation, 86% damage mitigation. You got to fight through that again. And so this is one of my problems. This is the reason PvP gets played the way it's played. This is why I don't play PvP. But like I said, I don't want this video to be about an opinion on me liking PvP or not. I'm just showing you guys that the reason that I don't play PvP is because of the damage mitigation, and you can see it in full action here, and the ability to heal, and the tankiness of people. And you can see those numbers when I brought this stuff up. So let's pull up the game real quick, and so we know now that enemy armor damage does not affect players, so we can remove that from your gear list. Like, don't put that on your gear. It's worthless. Choose other things. Whatever. I'm not doing a character build yet because I'm not ready to. But enemy armor damage will not be in my build, obviously, because it doesn't affect players. So, one thing that I obviously knew right off the bat when I looked at these skills the first day I logged into the game, and this is why people run it. So everyone runs Survivor Link and PvP. But does anybody know why everyone runs Survivor Link and PvP? It's because the math is completely flawed. It's just horrible logic. There's so many things like this in the game too. It's just dumbfounding logic to me. So one ultimate gives me an 80% damage resistance and 30% movement speed for 15 seconds. It has the same range as all the other ones. Actually, this one has a wider range, but it has, comparing it to the damage one, it has the same range as the other ones. It has the same cooldown as the other ones. And so, which one is better? Well, most people would be like, well, it depends on your build. Well, that would be that would make sense, right? Depends on your build. Depends on what it is you're striving for. In this case, this 80% number is so large that there is no other choice to use, guys. And it's because I'm just going to assume that it's just not obvious sometimes of how these numbers are working. This is pretty simple math, and some people are already going to know where I'm going with this, but still, I want to show it, okay? If we have a stat of 100, and both players are doing 100 damage, okay? And we want to have one person have a buff, and another person have a debuff, and those two things can offset each other. So if we give one person, so it seems logical just to automatically assume that if we give one person 50% damage buff and we give one person a 50% damage debuff, that they'll end up doing the same amount of damage to each other. Because one guy's doing 50% more damage, and then the other dude's causing that dude to do 50% less damage. But that's not how it adds up when you actually do it. And that's just the way percentages work when you're reducing by a percentage and increasing by a percentage. So if the guy who has a damage buff on, if he pops his damage buff and he gets 50% extra damage, he does 150 damage. Whoops, wrong number. Okay, and then the other dude who has the debuff says, oh no, he has 150% damage now. I need to reduce his damage back to 100. I need to pop my 50% damage reduction. Well, 50% of 150 brings you back to 75. Well, that's how it works. That's how math works with percentages when you reduce by percentages. So, if you want to actually bring that person, if you want to use a damage buff to offset a person's, if you want to use a debuff to offset a person's damage buff and have those things come back to the same thing where they're essentially doing the same thing percentage-wise, the damage buff has to be twice the size of the damage debuff. Okay? So, if you're doing 100 and you get a 100% damage buff, that takes your number to 200. And if a person has a debuff which does half that, a 50% damage debuff, then that brings your number back to 100, which is the exact same number that you started with. And so those two things offset each other. So what you can take from that is that a damage buff, if we're talking about two people shooting each other. So in the case of our example, if we had two players who had 10,000 weapon damages and they both had 65% armor mitigation and every single thing was the same exact thing on their character. Every single thing on their character was the same, besides their ultimates. And then they pop their ultimates. So they're shooting each other and they're hitting, I shoot you for 1,400, you shoot me for 1,400. And then I pop my ultimate and I get a damage mitigator, or I get my damage buff because I'm the DPS guy. Okay, so let's give you your damage buff and let's see how much you hit for. You get 50% with Tactical Link. There's no way to make it go any higher. No matter how high your skill power is, it does 50%. So we want to do 1,400 times 50% and add that to 1,400, and we will be doing 2,100 damage now. Okay, well, the guy sees that we're running our damage buff, so he's going to throw on his 80% damage buff. So, we're only going to be doing 20% of this damage. Oh, sorry, 2,100. We're only going to be doing 20% of the 2,100 damage. And he reduces our damage from 2,100, guys, to 420. That's what he's getting. Now, meanwhile, we have him debuffed. We have his damage debuffed. We have damage resistance on us. We're the Tactical Link guys now. We have 80% damage resistance on top of 60% mitigation and 65%, and he has that same number, the 65 and the 60, but we have 80% damage resistance, and he has 50% damage increase. He is hitting us for 420. We're hitting him for 1,400. we're hitting him for 3.5 times the amount that he's hitting us for. And so when I first realized, when I came in here and I saw damage resistance 80%, damage buff 50%, I was like, what? I was like, for you to get the same damage buff, now I'll admit there is some crit chance in here, but screw that. This is completely meaningless at this point. It's very small difference. But if you want this tactical link to offset the survivor link, this thing has to be 160% damage buff, not 50%. So the tactical link is just fucking OP as fuck. And so I was like, well, maybe the cooldown is different. The cooldown's the same. Well, I was like, well, maybe tactical link has a longer duration, and that makes sense. And then they even out each other over the long run. Survivor link has a longer duration. So not only is the guy hitting you, you're reducing his damage down to 420 while you're still hitting him for 1400. After he runs out of his damage buff, which is giving him... So let's really look. Here's another way to look at it too. But after he runs out of that thing, you're still hitting him for 3 more seconds, and he has no buff up, and he's still only doing 200 and some damage to you. So if we do 1400 and we get the damage buff, that's how much damage reduction it is. It's 280 points is what you're actually hitting somebody for, and you're only getting your 50% on the 280 because it's the same thing. 420. You're getting your damage buff of 50% is, what was it, 1400? Hold on. 1400 times 0.2. 280 divided by 10,000. Look at this number, guys. -1. 97.2% damage mitigation. Bullet sponge. Everybody wants to say, I heard a ton of people when this game first started coming out, and they were like, I hope the NPCs are like actually like tactical and they're good, and I hope they're not bullet sponges, because that's what a lot of these games do, is just turn the other guy into bullet sponges, and there's no strategy or tactics or anything, and it's just all about the bullet sponge. And that's what makes the NPCs good. I present you PvP bullet sponge. That's all PvP is a bunch of bullet sponges, guys. And so I honestly believe, so, take this information and do what you want to with it. Number 1, enemy armor damage does not work against players. Number 2, Survivor Link is the hands down 100% best possible ultimate that you can use in the game. There is no other reason to use it. I could go on and on about how that affects when you have 4 players running it. You have 4 players running it versus 2 players. If you have a group of 4 and a group of 2, and all 4 dudes are using Survivor Link, and the other guys are using Survivor Link too, these 2 guys can have Survivor Link. They can have 97% damage mitigation for 30 seconds. These 4 guys, which is twice the number of dudes as 2 guys, for those of you who aren't with me here, those guys have 97% damage resistance for a solid minute. So as soon as these guys' 97% damage resistance runs out, they're dead. Game over. You cannot kill someone who has 97% damage resistance. It's impossible. You cannot kill them. I mean, it is possible, but you can't kill them. But then you go back to the video when the guy healed himself. 97% damage resistance, and then you can heal. So there's no, you literally cannot kill someone with 97% damage resistance if they have some ability to heal. It's a 0% chance to kill them, because you're doing 200 damage a bullet, and their fucking heals them for 100% health. This is why I don't play PvP. This is how you should build your character. You should build it around damage mitigation. It's probably exactly what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to be doing a character video where I talk about, like, I'm choosing this stat because of this, and this is why we're stacking this on top of that, and it's going to be tanky as shit. I can guarantee you right now, and it will have Survivor Link on it, and it will not have enemy armor damage. So there's some information for you guys to chew on with PvP, and yeah, so 97% damage mitigation. Go get you some, and watch some guy pop Tactical Link and be like, oh, you're doing 200 damage, and just blast him in his face. Alright guys, this is Gump, and that is damage mitigation in the division, and that's not other buffs. Like we could make it lower. We could make it way lower. Actually, we can only go so far, but we can make it lower, which is insane. All right, guys, take it easy. Scum.